Here you go.
Oh, competing. Testing. Okay.
Hello? Yes, testing. Okay, get started. Welcome to the Environmental Commission meeting, February 2026. We're going to change, we have another commissioner arriving. I think we're going to change the order a little bit, but we'll still start out with a roll call.
Okay.
Commission Chair Kramer,
Present.
Commission Vice Chair O'Connor,
Here.
Commissioner Parker,
Here.
Commissioner Switzler,
Present.
Commissioner Bruner,
Here.
and Commissioner Wick.
Present.
Let the record show we have a quorum with 6 commissioners present and 0 absent.
Okay, would anyone like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll do it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we have one change to the agenda. The informational item will be heard after tonight's action items.
Okay, great. So do we have any oral communications?
Yes, we have one speaker, Peggy Walker, regarding smoke-free multi-unit housing.
Hello, Commissioners, and thank you for this time to speak and for what you do. My name is Peggy Walker, and I'm with San Diego Alliance for Drug-Free Youth. I'm here tonight with just an informational item. It's about our San Diego Smoke-Free San Diego project, and we wanted to let you know what it's all about. It ties in with the city's endeavor to provide smoke-free, clean air. Our goal is to reduce unwanted tobacco and marijuana smoke and secondhand smoke and toxic third-hand smoke from multi-unit housing projects in Encinitas, Del Mar, and Solana Beach. Our objective is to bring about smoke-free multi-unit housing ordinances in the 3 cities. And this ties in so closely with the work that the city has already done to provide smoke-free clean air. I know this is on your work plan, and I want to urge you to keep it on the work plan. I know you're transitioning, but I hope you'll keep this as a focus. The project grew out of requests from families that we work with. We work with a lot of Hispanic families, and we've gotten so many complaints over the years about drifting smoke in their apartments. But so many of these people are afraid to complain. They're afraid that they'll lose their homes. They don't know how to register their objections. And a lot of them have children who are really detrimentally impacted by the by smoke in their units. One girl came to us, she's an asthmatic, and they've had to change living units 5 times because of the drifting smoke, and it impacts her asthma, and she's a constant ER patient. ER staff has gotten to know her because of the drifting smoke triggered asthma attacks. But it's not just her. We've heard this from many families. If you look at the second sheet, you'll find out there's some data on how popular the idea is of smoke-free living. And we conducted a survey and found that 94% of 300 people surveyed approve smoke-free multi-unit housing. You may be familiar with AB 455 or not. It was just passed. It requires anybody who sells a single-family home to let the buyer know if that home has had smoking in it. We just feel that people who live in rental housing deserve the same protection. So thank you for your time. I hope you'll think about it.
Thank you. Thanks for your continued engagement on this issue. Do we have any other oral communications?
No other oral communications.
Okay, looks like no presentations. And we can go to the approval of minutes. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move to approve the minutes from the January 8th meeting.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, great. All in favor? Well, maybe we can wait for Commissioner.
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. Then we will move to the action item, which is the review of the work plan and calendar.
All right. Thank you, Chair. So as similar to your every other month update, I'll be giving you an update on your work plan and the latest activity that the commission or the city staff has completed as it relates to that particular project. Okay, so for the first project, which is commission outreach and representation, I actually have a bigger update this time around. We've gotten a better handle on our outreach, and we have actually a pretty robust outreach calendar now, and springtime is the busy time for outreach. So the past events up to this point, whether we've done quite a bit actually in the past few months. So in October, city staff was at Dia de los Muertos, both for Mira Costa College and at the Encinitas Library. And then in November, that second Dia de los Muertos event was November 1st. And then later in November was the Holiday Street Fair, in which there was also a city presence to disseminate information about sustainability. And then in January, the last day in January and the first day in February, city staff attended the 2 farmers markets in the city to also share sustainability information. And then upcoming, we have in February is the Senior Lifestyle Expo, which city staff plans to attend at a booth. So just welcome commission staff to participate in that as well. And then also later this spring in March is the Zero Waste Textile Expo, and that's also at the community center. And then lastly in April is the Spring Egg Hunt, which the city puts on as a pretty major event in the city, and there's several booths and lots of participation there, and city staff will also be in attendance with a booth there as well. Carol?
I just wanted to say, not lastly, and April 25th is Arbor Day.
Oh, wonderful. I'll add that.
So that's Saturday, April 25th. It's usually 9 to 12.
Okay. We'll get the details, and I'll present that next month. All right, anything else on outreach? Okay, so I'll jump to the awards program. So the press release for kicking off the awards program was published, and nominations are being received. The nomination period will be open until Friday, February 27th. Any comments from the subcommittee on that one?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I checked before the meeting, and we have at least 1 nomination in each category.
Wonderful. All right, so moving right along. Oh, my apologies. So for the native plant policy, I didn't highlight this in red, but I can share that. What would you like to know? Patty is here, and she's running that. So would you like to give a brief update?
Yes, please.
How opportunistic. No. Yes, it is going to Planning Commission on the Thursday, the 19th. So next week.
Is that the
Yeah.
last step before it goes to council? Okay.
Yes, and it's a well-written ordinance, if I do say so myself, so staff did a great job. My senior planner did an excellent job on that.
Great,
All
thank
right,
you.
thanks, Patty.
6 o'clock, Planning Commission. Do you know, Maria?
Yeah, you can always double check the agenda website for the official time.
I think it's 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I don't go to PC often.
Oh, I'm sorry. I noticed the situation here. So there's so much happening with the native plant policy that Excel spreadsheets don't allow you to have a cell that's longer than what we actually need. So there's actually 2 cells for the native plant policy here. So the update for the native plant policy that I have down here is on February 19th at 6 o'clock, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing to consider a recommendation to City Council regarding the approval and adoption of the native plant ordinance. And then thereafter, the policy will be taken to council for consideration. All right. And then next is I don't have updates for the mobility element update, but for the climate action plan update, there's been a lot going on in this project. So our consultant is well underway with the benefit cost analysis. Staff has been back and forth with the consultant on some preliminary drafts of portions of the study. And we anticipate that we'll be able to share a draft version of the updated climate action plan and the benefit cost analysis with the Environmental Commission next month. And then going to City Council, actually, the date to City Council has changed slightly since the publishing of this agenda, but we're looking now at early April, taking it to Council. And then,
And Crystal, sorry, when
Yeah,
it goes
sure.
to council, they're just hearing the draft and the BCA, right? They're not voting to approve the cap at that point?
yeah, so yeah, I can elaborate on that. Thanks for asking. So the April meeting, staff is planning to ask council for their feedback and any direction to make any changes to the cap based on their thoughts. And then once we receive that direction, we will make any final changes to the climate action plan and then take it back to council for approval and adoption. And we expect that to happen in June. So that's kind of the long timeline. Yeah. Any other questions on that one? Okay. Okay, so the next project is the sand compatibility and opportunistic use program. And I'm happy to share here that we've had a couple of sand projects occur within the last month. So the Bataquitos Low Sand Sandag Railroad Bridge double tracking has been an ongoing project in the Bataquitos Lagoon. And recently they added approximately 6,000 cubic yards of sand to the beach on at the north end of the city. And then upcoming is, which is actually starting next week, is a scoop project where the city will be receiving sand from the Belmont Village Development Project. And we anticipate 9,400 cubic yards of sediment from that project. And like I said, it'll start next week and it'll take approximately 2 to 3 weeks to deliver the sand to, there's going to be a staging area at Moonlight Beach. And then we have a contractor who will be hauling the sand to a final deposit site just north of Beacons Beach.
Can you let us know where that Belmont Village project is located?
Yeah, it's on Manchester. It's just east of the freeway entrance, kind of in the gas station, right there on Manchester, between there and the college.
And Crystal, I had a question about the Bataquitos project.
Uh-huh.
Is the railroad double tracking related to the sand replenishment project on the beach? Or the separate?
Yeah, we got the sand from the railroad double tracking project. So in the process of constructing their project, they have excess sand.
Okay.
And they are able to add that to the beach.
And was this just sort of an additional phase of the beach replenishment plan for Encinitas? Was that north end of the city not covered in the first beach replenishment phase last year, I think it was? Or is this?
Are you referring to the Bataquitos Lagoon dredging, that
I guess I was
project?
talking to just about the citywide kind of like sand replenishment project. I think, was that a year or maybe 2 years
I
ago
think it was the
now?
last Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh, are you talking about the Army Corps project?
Offshore
Yeah.
trenching,
Offshore
sand.
Dredging, yeah.
Yeah, so that is a separate project, and that is on a 5-year cycle, and that's done in coordination with the Army Corps, and they get that sand for that project from an offshore borrow site. So that's, different sand source, different project.
But it
So,
sounds like there's coordination because it stopped well before Beacons. It didn't go north, so now you're trying to
my question.
right,
link that
yeah,
area
that,
together.
the Army Corps project has a different site designation for where the sand is allowed to be dropped. And then the scoop program for the city also has different sites for where sand is allowed to be dropped. This is all based on prior permitting and environmental analysis and all of that. So, so yeah, they are definitely unique projects, and where the sand is permitted to be dropped is based on those reviews and the permits that were acquired.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question also.
Yeah.
With the double tracking sand, double tracking low sand from Bataquitos Lagoon, is part of it going to Carlsbad also?
Initially, that was the plan, but when it came time to actually deposit the sand, it turned out that the city of Carlsbad didn't have the proper permits in place to be able to put the sand on the beach.
Okay.
And so in the end, all the sand did go on the city of Encinitas portion of the beach because we had our permits in place. Yeah.
Good for you, Crystal.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. All right, moving right along, I'll jump to.
So, Crystal, on the zero waste, we did meet with Paul in October of last year. You're supposed to add that?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And Mayor Ehlers is spelled wrong, Ehler.
Oh, we will fix that as well. Thank you.
I think we also talked about adding that zero waste toolkit that was put on the city's website as well, adding that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was added in I think in October.
Alrighty, I'm definitely happy to add those here. Anything else that I missed or that you want to add? All right, great. And then I will jump to project 11 unless anyone has anything else for any of the others. Okay, so for B-City USA, this is the time of year when staff is doing the annual report for our B-City activities. So the annual report is being drafted by staff and will be completed before the end of February. And then at that time, we'll have staff present the annual report and results to the Environmental Commission at a future meeting, likely very soon after February. So your agendas, we'll look at the agendas and see what timing is available based on other items, but likely in March or April, we'll provide that presentation.
So could you add the Flora Vista School pollinator garden that was just put in? It was just put in with San Diego Botanic Garden, which I think is part of the contract with the city. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I'm not aware that that's associated with the city, but I'm happy to mention it in the annual report because it happened in the city.
I can give you the contact.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Carol.
I had one other thing. I think there's a group working on the piece of property at the Pacific View Arts to create a pollinator garden there, and I believe it was presented to the Park and Rec Commission maybe last month. I was just wondering if it was going to be tied in, if those groups know that we're participating in Bee City USA, and if that can be of any help to the decision-making as it's progressing through the city to become a finalized pollinator native plant.
Yeah,
area.
I mean, we're definitely aware that there's native plants were installed there as part of the construction of the redevelopment of that site. But thank you for bringing that up. There's some new staff that work over there, and if they're doing anything related to Bee City or pollinator efforts, it would be definitely great for us to coordinate. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'll reach out to them to see if we can make sure we align our efforts.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, and the last update, which is not really an update, but for the environmentally preferable purchasing policy, I know it was in staff's court to get some work done and start tracking our efforts to implement the policy. And I do have to share this month that with the CAP update being such a high priority and some other items, there just hasn't been time for staff to focus on this particular project. So I hope very soon after the CAP update is completed that we can jump back on this one. But at this point, we just don't have enough time, unfortunately. So.
And I always have to remind myself, so pardon me, but the comments that we made, but I forget how we were handling that. They're going to start reporting and then look at the comments. I thought after the CAP update, we were gonna somehow get those comments in front of them.
Yeah. So I would like to have staff work on making sure that our implementation of the policy is well coordinated first, and then we can look at addressing any possible revisions to the policy based on your comments. So I would say, kind of have staff do our work first, and then we can circle back on to the comments that you provided and make sure, because some of your comments were things like, a good example is, hey, it looks like the policy says to provide, that there's an annual report that's supposed to be generated, and that's not something that staff had been doing. And so that's part of the effort, is we want to make sure that we can get that type of information to you, and then we can circle back and decide. You can decide, is this useful information? Does it make sense to keep this in the policy, or whatever your comments were?
No, okay, because there was also some low-hanging fruit about, some of the portions in there were just, very outdated.
Yeah.
So
For
I
sure.
guess that's where I was thinking, is if they
Yeah.
even see the low-hanging fruit, maybe it's worth it as they start reporting on it.
Yeah, and all of that I think is great to have noted, and it will take, since it's a policy, it will take a formal action to make those revisions. So it's not work that's not, I think it's just more on hold and not, and once we get more involved in implementing the policy, then we can circle back and take a look at those comments and see what works best in terms of making changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Okay, and that was the last update. So if you have any other updates, now would be a good time to bring those up, and we can incorporate them for next time.
I guess no updates. Thanks, Crystal.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and then were we going to go over the calendar?
Yeah, we can go over the
Okay,
calendar.
great. Oh, I guess we need to approve it, sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the work plan update. With the recommended revisions that we discussed.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thanks. Let's look at the calendar.
All right, and then the calendar. So what's happening in February is the Environmental Awards program is going on. The nominations will close towards the end of February. And then what just happened last night, actually, is council interviewed for possible environmental commission applicants and did select 2 of the applicants to serve on the commission. So congratulations to Carol Parker. She'll be serving an additional term. And then I don't have it right in front of me, I apologize, but there was a second new commissioner selected as well. So that will be, they will be starting in March.
Great. Congrats, Carol.
And then coming up in March, the new commissioners will begin their terms. So that will be facilitated. And then in March is when the new chair and vice chair are selected. So we'll have that on your agenda. And then lastly, in March, I would like to start early and have the subcommittee established to initiate the work plan update at your next monthly meeting as well. So look forward to those coming up in your meeting in March. And then in April, and one thing that's not on here, but it's more of an informal item, as I mentioned, is we will be bringing you the CAP update in March. And then in April, the next regularly kind of annual item is to adopt your recommended work plan. And then in May is when I would ask that you take it to council for consideration, and hopefully they'll adopt it in May. And then you'd have a new work plan.
And will this still be a 2-year work plan?
That is what I would recommend. That to me, it seems like it's been working well, that your projects seem to be more kind of longer term ongoing projects. So to have to revisit every year your work plan, to me, seems pretty frequent. And I don't know. I mean, ultimately it's up to you, but yeah, the subcommittee can discuss it and decide which way to go. So
Thanks.
yeah.
Who is on that subcommittee? It's been a while since anybody.
I think we're going
You
to
guys
decide
can
that.
select it next month.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're interested, be thinking about it and throw your hat in the ring in March.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Crystal.
Okay. Oops.
Okay. I think should we move to our presentation now? Or sorry,
Ready?
our
Okay.
informational item?
There you go.
I guess I could go through like 9 and 10 while we're waiting, just to save time. It looks like we have no commissioner-initiated action agenda items.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for juggling the agenda. So my name is Patty Anders. I'm our planning manager. I oversee our policy and housing division. And with me is Eric DeCock from Ascent Environmental, who was kind enough to fly in for Tuesday night's resource management community workshop and this presentation. So I'm grateful to have him here. Let's see. I just wanted to go over our agenda this evening. So as you're aware, this will be an informational item just to inform you of our focused update to the resource management element. It's not a comprehensive update. It is really a focused update just to comply with 2 laws, which Eric will be discussing in greater detail. And we will also include the outreach that has been completed to date, and then how to provide comments for yourself or anyone that you might know that might be interested. In addition, and then, of course, tonight we'll answer some questions and comments, receive comments, because we really want to hear from you and get your feedback. And with that, I will turn it over to Eric.
Thanks so much, Patty. Can everybody hear me? Go. The red button goes to green. Awesome. Eric DeCaucus, Environmental, really nice to meet you all. Apologies for my late arrival. This is the first time in almost 30 years of my career that I've been late to a publicly noticed meeting. So for the record, I was 100% and now I'm not. So, but thanks for your patience and thanks for accommodating my lateness this evening. Oh, you wanted to slip? Okay, that's great. So we're here tonight to, as Patty mentioned, to talk about this update to this one element of the city's general plan because of two new laws which are passed, which I'll get into momentarily. But of course, many of you may know, and if you don't know about general plans, this resource management element is just one of several elements in the city's general plan. There's a land use element, circulation, safety, housing, and other related elements in that general plan. And of course, the scope of the update, as Patty mentioned, is just the resource management element, and it's a focused update to address two new laws that were signed by the governor in the past couple of years. One is Senate Bill 1425, the other is Assembly Bill 1889. And there's really four main sets of requirements across those two bills. Across the screen, you see there's the equitable access to open space requirement in SB 1425, and it really asks local governments in California to address, and quote, access to open space for all residents in a manner that considers social, economic, and racial equity correlated with the environmental justice element or environmental justice policies in the general plan as applicable. The next one is rewilding, and so that's kind of a new term for planning in California, and that's also a SB 1425 requirement. It really defines rewilding as opportunities in the bill and really defines it as opportunities to preserve, enhance, or expand an integrated network of open space to support beneficial uses such as habitat, recreation, natural resources, historical tribal resources, water management, aesthetics. And it can also mean, a second definition in the bill is you can also address this by establishing a natural communities conservation plan to provide for coordinated mitigation of the impacts of new development. So sort of two different ways you could look at it depending on how you choose a jurisdiction to interpret those requirements or definitions. The third one is climate resilience, and it is quite a brief requirement. The law basically says address climate resilience and other co-benefits open space correlated with the safety element. Then the last one is habitat connectivity, and that's a separate bill. It's Assembly Bill 1889. And the list of what the bill requires is quite long, so I've paraphrased it here to the main points, which are really about habitat connectivity relating to existing or planned land use. You have to identify or analyze opportunities to remediate barriers that are there that inhibit wildlife connectivity, or looking at existing or planned wildlife passage features. And it's really about, because it's a general plan element, it's really mostly focused on considering the impacts of development and the barriers that that development could cause to wildlife or habitat connectivity. Next slide. So the beginning of the process, about a little over a year ago, we started working with staff to really look at what open space even exists in the city. And one of the things I didn't mention in my introductory remarks is the city has a separate recreation element. So we made a decision, even though open space by law can include things like developed parks, sports fields, recreation facilities, for the purpose of this update, because the city has two different elements, that we were going to focus on the open space that's undeveloped. In other words, it's not really used for active park uses like sports, playgrounds. That's really the responsibility of the recreation. We're going to look at those undeveloped open spaces that are mostly vegetated, those areas along your creek corridors, your lagoons here in Encinitas, some of the open spaces where the city has already acquired open space easement pursuant to local codes and plans. So it's really kind of looking at that series of open spaces. And as you can see on the diagram, that's sort of a patchwork of different spaces with different layers of regulation or reserve or easements, if you will. And it's not an easy diagram to understand in just a minute. It takes a good chunk of time looking at this. But you can see that we've put conserved lands where they're protected by law, lands where there's an easement that the city or others might have acquired. It could be public parks. We wanted to make sure that parks were at least seen in the context of other open spaces, just because they are connected to those undeveloped open spaces as well. So anyway, it's just an illustrative diagram of sort of the upfront technical work we did to really just understand the system of open spaces, because as you heard, some of the laws do ask you to think about open spaces as an integrated system. So we wanted to understand that system and where there are already protections or at least acknowledgement of some important resources in terms of open space and its uses as it exists today. Next slide, please. Another thing we did, as we looked at all the existing conditions or opportunities, was just thinking about what is the city already doing, either on its own or in a partnership with other organizations or agencies in the region or even statewide, to think about what you can do to even look at some of these issues around access, climate resilience, rewilding, or habitat connectivity. So you can see there's an array of bullet points here on the slide that really do call out some of those actions the city itself is taking or is partnering with others. And I won't read them all, but I know just calling out a few important ones like the Cardiff Living Shoreline Project has been important, some of the work that's been done on the multi-species conservation plan, even though it's in draft form. There has been work in the region to move some of those regulatory efforts forward. Things like Encinitas is really important habitat stewardship program, working with Nature Collective, and really important work that goes on almost more at the program level to really steward that habitat, to maintain it, to educate the public, to involve them in those spaces. So it's just really great to see, as we were really surprised actually. I'm an out-of-towner, so it was really cool to see how much actually goes on here in Encinitas to protect natural resources and to promote some of these issues already. Crystal's here as well, so I know the climate action and adaptation planning that's going on. The previous work to update the safety element just a few years did look at some of the climate resilience issues as well. So we wanted to acknowledge a lot of this climate or safety and resilience work has already been done. It's maybe not 100% done, but a lot of the citywide planning as far as the general plan concerned really did look at the climate vulnerabilities in the city and the region and how the city can promote resilience and safety already. So that's encouraging. Next slide, please. So as we dig into these 4 topics, I wanted to start with equitable access because there is also a lot of connectivity in the city already we found. You can see on this diagram actually shows all the different ways that open space is accessed, whether it's shared youth pathways, bicycle lanes, bicycle routes, sideway or walkways, paved trails, unpaved trails. So this really shows that system of connectivity between the open spaces that exist in Encinitas. And there, of course, could be gaps or areas where we have a planned connection and not an existing connection, so that's acknowledged, but at least the city has, in those cases, planned for better connectivity between open spaces, which is important to recognize as well, that we're on a journey to improving that connectivity. So, it is about, again, just as a reminder, the bill asks us to look at ensuring fair and equitable access to open space. We did some work as well to look at where lower income folks in apartments or folks with, special needs, elderly populations, just making sure that those that maybe are a little bit more vulnerable or less advantaged, if there are any gaps in the system. And we found that that's not really necessarily true. If anything, it's about making sure that there is connectivity generally to where people live. And of course, there could always be little improvements here and there, which I think the city is already doing a really good job of looking where those improvements could happen. Next slide, please. In terms of climate resilience, again, it is about the ability to, when we think about what does resilience really mean, it's really about the ability to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, or recover from hazardous events that are exacerbated by climate change. Sea level rise is perhaps our one new unique issue that's caused by climate change, but we've had wildfires for centuries, but of course climate change is making that exposure and that risk elevated. So we want to be mindful of that as we think about fire risk in the community. Things like, also flooding, there is seasonal flooding that happens, and climate change we know is going to make precipitation events more acute and more unpredictable. So it's important to recognize that the system of drainage that we have or green spaces can really help to mitigate, if you will, some of those flooding impacts. So again, just an example on the screen too. Really important work has taken place here already to do beach nourishment, to look at living shoreline repairs. We just want to acknowledge the great work that's already been done and that will continue to be done, as this isn't just a one-time thing. Some of this is maintenance and it's ongoing on a multi-year or a decadal basis to look at how beaches are being impacted by sea level rise. Next slide, please. Rewilding is a fun one because the statutory definition in SB 1425 is quite a bit broader than maybe the conservation or the ecological community would have you want to think. Of course, the bill does say that rewilding can be, again, preserving, enhancing, or expanding an integrated network of open space to support a lot of different people's or wildlife's needs, right? Whether it's habitat, recreational uses for people, natural resources for their multi-use benefits. And of course, historic and tribal resources are called out in the definition as well, water management and aesthetics. And again, just recognizing that really important steps have been taken through not just the habitat stewardship plan. There's the native landscaping ordinance. The city's been working on a mature tree ordinance. So there has been works not just at the planning level, but at the regulatory level to look at maybe how could we really bring native species or natural landscaping back into the community. Ornamentals are nice, but we really get a lot of benefit from bringing natives back, whether it's pollinators or other wildlife species that really depend on that whole ecosystem approach. That vegetation is really the building block, if you will. So it's great to see that that's done, but of course there could always be some improvements in terms of how intentional we are about rewilding. Rewilding is pretty broad in the ecological sense. Is it landscaping, or are we thinking about bigger picture of how Encinitas' open spaces are connected in the region? Some of these creek corridors don't stop at the city limits. They go up further up into the upland areas of the county. So we want to be mindful of where those connectivity opportunities might exist as well. And I think there's some really important considerations there. And last but not least, habitat connectivity. And again, closely related to rewilding, but a little bit more explicitly connected to the movement of species that might depend on habitat connectivity for their survival, especially larger species that need very large areas of range. Of course, we think about with rewilding, a lot of rewilding efforts are focused on the needs of mountain lions or deer that have fairly large migration corridors. They need hundreds of miles to travel. But of course, there's other species that need connectivity and they don't have such large ranges. So we want to be mindful of rewilding could mean a lot of things depending on who we're thinking about or what natural species we're thinking about. And so there's a lot of kind of potential out there to different ways to frame it and to think about policy and what the city's role is in that. So, we didn't get into the specifics of all the goals and policies where we added new policies, deleted them, modified them. We can get into your questions on that, but we just wanted to give an overview tonight, kind of the analysis we did and kind of what we found, and we're definitely happy to take your questions or comments tonight. I did, before we turn to that, want to do just a quick overview of the outreach that's been done to date. If we want to go to the next slide, we just do have some of the bullet points on the screen that highlight. We did start engagement in the spring last year as we were kind of in the middle of that existing conditions or opportunities analysis for this update. We did set up a website. The staff did a great job of making sure we were signing up folks to stay connected to the project, to get email announcements on the way as we were scheduling events or releasing documents for review. There were a few booths, just kind of informal, what we call pop-up booths or events to really let people know what the city was doing with this element update. There were 2 in the spring last year, and then we just had 2 just a week ago, I think, a week and a half ago at the farmers markets here in town, really to let folks know that the element was just released for a 30-day public review and that there would be meetings coming up. The workshop earlier this week and even in this environmental commission meeting tonight would be opportunities to hear more. So that was successful. We did have a workshop Tuesday night this week, and not a big turnout, but we had 6 or 7 people in the room, maybe 1 person online. It was a hybrid meeting and had a nice discussion about kind of questions that folks had about the update or concerns. And of course, we are here tonight with you as well, another way that you can engage with us, and the public, of course, as well is welcome to make comments. So that draft was released on January 26th. The 30-day public comment period does close on February 27th, so just a couple more days here in that period, and definitely, I know staff are already starting to receive a few written comments in their inboxes as well. And so what have we been hearing? A lot of community members they've told us they love Encinitas open spaces. They use them weekly, daily, sometimes more. Some of the well-loved spaces, of course, include the Manchester Preserve, the San Elijo Lagoon, Cottonwood Creek Park, Encinitas Community Parks, and folks also mentioned that even just informal trails and canyons are important to them. They're appreciative for opportunities to bike, walk, enjoy nature, or just experience some quiet in their lives, which is important. Residents also tell us that they do value biodiversity and nature in general. They expressed a lot of interest in native plants, larger trees, shade, flowers, and more wild or restored areas was important. Some suggestions for improvement for the city were things like adding more bathrooms, picnic-friendly greening areas shielded from roads, better trail access, and Another important thing, related to the equitable access is making sure that the spaces we have are inclusive, that everyone feels welcome regardless of your background. And that's important to think about as well, because that's kind of a programming thing. It's not so much a physical planning thing. It can be, but that's an important thing to consider as well. And even something that came up at the workshop the other night that isn't on the slide is someone mentioned, we should have bike parking at trailheads, so that's very specific. If we want to talk about being green, being multimodal, well, it was noted that some of our trailheads aren't multimodal yet in terms of what happens when people arrive. So that was a really important comment, I think, as well to recognize and as we consider some of these updates. So I think that's it for the public, the outreach overview. We just want to let you know that, again, there's a QR code for those that might be watching or just want to scan this. This will take you right to the page to learn more about the project and where to submit comments. We, of course, do have on the screen the deadline for comments. The public's welcome to make comments till that date. And, of course, Evan Jednak, the project manager with staff, his email and phone number are here on the screen as well. And I think that's it for me. Patty, did you want to add anything else?
No, Carol, thank you for attending Tuesday night as well. But no, this is our time for questions or comments and to receive any feedback from you all.
Great, thank you so much. I have just been directed to just make sure we all have a chance to speak. So maybe we could kind of, each of us go through, but just, one or two brief comments. And then if you still have, then we'll go to the next person and then we can go around again, just so we don't have a laundry list of questions coming out of one person at a time, just so we all have a chance to speak. But does anyone want to go first? Questions
I'll go first.
or comments?
Well, let's go this way. Work
Sure,
over
that sounds good.
I've seen a lot of language about our original people who lived here, or the tribal connection to the land. Does the city have a liaison to a local band of Indians to help discuss? You probably think where water runs, the creek would have been important, or swamis for food, to help us identify things that were more important than just the overall land was theirs, but highlight certain key things, a burial ground or something that through tradition and history they know exists that we don't know, that we would be able to highlight at these various locations, give them the credit that's due.
Yeah, so because it is a general plan amendment, we're required pursuant to SB 18 to do tribal consultation. So the city proactively did informal consultation and only heard from one tribe. And now we are in formal consultation, which we reached out to all of the tribes. And we have heard back from one tribe that we are engaging in consultation with. And there's certain resources that have to remain confidential, and then there may be other opportunities for more publicly noticed or acknowledged resources. But we are in the middle of doing that formal consultation as required pursuant to SB 18.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, my main comment suggestion was kind of just concerning the intersection between these state laws that have been passed that are going to guide the element and the multiple habitat conservation program or multi-species conservation plan that we do not have adopted in Encinitas and has really stymied kind of developing in a way that allows for ecological connectivity and the preservation of high quality, intact habitat. So will this element that's guided by these state laws sort of replace having a multiple habitat conservation program? Or I'm just kind of curious, what will happen now?
Yeah, that's a good question because it is a draft document and the city does rely on that. It won't replace it. The city there's 5 properties that are currently identified as our what is it called? It is our early MHCP implementation program, which is now what we all know as morphed into the Encinitas Habitat Stewardship Program. So it will not replace that, but we did take that into consideration because the Habitat Steward Program has 10 specific sites. We've gone through 5 of them. There's annual funding associated with them, but as Eric mentioned, they did an incredible amount of research and analysis on all our existing plans and policies. So this is, you can think about it as the general plan is our very high-level programmatic policy document that implements the, or that guides the implementation measures. And so like the Habitat Steward would be, it's mentioned in here, and it would be one of the implementing tools, but they're certainly not going to replace one another.
Okay, and so how will this element sort of be implemented? Like, will it require the consideration of improving habitat connectivity in terms of like development or like the planning element? Like, will it impact the planning element? I get kind of just wondering about the legal aspects of it, I guess.
Yeah, so general plans they're not necessarily the implementation pieces. Like, for example, the land use plan, right? We have a land use element, and the implementing tool for the land use element is the zoning code, right? It has the zoning map and the zoning code. But the land use element is the high-level programmatic policy planning, setting priorities, setting density limits, and a variety of other things. But it's really a high level, and the implementing. There's other documents that actually implement the plan, and that came up on Tuesday night too.
Okay.
The implementation piece. So the element will help inform and influence what implementation tools get funded and are necessary to actually see. To implement the recreation, the resource management plan.
So the resource management plan will be considered in the land use plan. Like, they will be harmonized in some way. Those kind of requirements will be.
We actually have a matrix that talks about in the back of the document of how they
I'll review
all harmonize. They have to be consistent, right? We would never want one element to be in conflict with the other. So we do look at all the other elements when we're developing this. And it's really important to note that this isn't a comprehensive, starting from scratch update. We're really, we're just focusing on what we need to do to comply with the law, because a comprehensive update would require so much more in terms of mapping, probably biological assessments, like just so much more. So we're really just trying to keep the general plan in compliance with new state law, just like we are with our housing element and our land use. This is something that we're actually being very proactive. A lot of cities haven't even embarked on this effort.
Okay, great. And just lastly, before we move on, I would just thank you so much for bringing this to us tonight. And we had only recently heard about this element in the Environmental Commission. It's not on our work plan, and it has been in the past a little bit tangential to our work. So we would love to stay involved, and this really is within the purview of the mission of the commission. So please let us help in any way we can.
Yes,
Thanks.
of course. Thank you.
Okay, I have one, I think, super basic question, but am I correct that most of our beaches would not be included in this because they're state parkland?
We don't control it, but we are certainly taking credit for the work that we've done. In fact, in my opinion, the Cardiff Living Shoreline, that's the best opportunity, or one of the most, I think, realistic opportunities for rewilding, because we're such a built-out community, right? And as Eric mentioned, the law is really broad, and I think intentionally so, because what's good for Wairika and Bakersfield isn't going to be the same for, Encinitas or Chula Vista, right? So it's very broad. So you have to take it in the context of your built environment and look at what are opportunities with your environment. That's why doing such a robust existing conditions report was really fundamental and paramount in knowing what our opportunities are. But our beaches are key. So they are included in terms of taking credit for all the work that the city has done, right? Crystal and her team have done a tremendous amount of work, and we definitely want to capture that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So does this give us like a better or new opportunity to work with state parks on things like that? Or, of course, they're subject to this as well. Or I guess how does that work then?
Well, we worked very closely with Todd to ensure that the policies and the programs would support the work efforts, not only previous work efforts, but future work efforts. So yes, we strategically built in policies and programs so that when he applies for grants, we can say, look, we have this in our general plan, because that's often what we have to use to justify grant applications. So there was a lot of coordination with Todd and looking, not just previous work, but looking forward into those opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like, I mean, the beach is the space that could be the most connected thing throughout the city, but like even in this photo, climate resilience can sometimes be at odds with that. Like putting rocks on the beach like this takes away our sand that reduces connectivity. So I suppose it's a balance, but yeah, no question, just comment, yeah. Thank you, though.
All right, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and talking with us tonight. I'm embarrassed to admit I wasn't aware of all the details of all the things you work on with your element, but it's really closely aligned with our goals and our charter on the commission, so really exciting to hear about all the stuff you're doing. I just had one quick question. You talked about, connectivity as far as access and as far as rewilding, but you said a lot of it may not exist now, but there's a plan or there's actions maybe in place to improve that. Is that plan available? Is that part of like what's in the public draft, or is that stuff that's still in work?
Yeah, so we didn't get into the weeds here, but let's go there a little bit, because I think a lot of what was even in the element already before we started this update already kind of reinforced some of this, but we took some opportunities to modify some of the policies that were already in the element and added words to make sure, like, if we were kind of inferring that we were doing something for the purpose of wildlife species, their health, their movement, we would like add the word for the purpose of habitat connectivity so that it was clear.
Yeah.
In other cases, we added entirely new policies. I was just looking at one on the page a moment ago that we really, the city already had a special study overlay zone in the general plan. And so we called out ways that overlay zone, we can integrate rewilding and habitat connectivity through the administration of that zone. So it's pretty, I could read it chapter and verse, but there are very specific things that the city can do through existing policies or new ones that we added in this proposed update to reinforce some
All
of
right,
that.
that's great. I'll have to look into that in more detail.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm with Rob too. I wasn't totally aware of all this work, but I'm going to save, I took a picture of the QR code. I'm going to save my comments for the public period. So thank you guys for bringing this to our attention. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Evan, you're very welcome. And I just want to say, Evan is the project planner, but he's on vacation. But please do provide written comments to us, because we do, analyze, and we'll bring all comments forward to City Council.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, well, thank you. I also was not aware of everything in this element, and I thought it was really interesting. And I guess I'm not 100% sure on I don't have a really good understanding of general plan versus implementation. And so, like, for instance, when you talk about your trees, the preservation of trees, it's like more than the mature tree ordinance, basically. And is the mature tree ordinance the implementation of this idea? Or I'm not really sure. I mean, so if you could talk a little about
Yeah, one of the justifications for us to start the work on the mature tree ordinance was because there's a policy in this resource management that says try to preserve, I think, as much mature trees as you can. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, so this sets our policy, right? It's just the overarching, and through these policies that are in here, that is what dictates our council-approved work plan, right? And then, like, this was staff's recommendation, because we knew we wanted to keep our general plan element in compliance, and so we brought it to council and got funding and approval to do that. So, and again, similarly, like with the beach efforts, right? We strategically wrote policies and goals to support the effort that we know are valuable to our city, helps with a variety of different, recreation, climate change, all the things, so that so it helps us be better positioned to compete and ask for council's direction or authorization to do some of the implementation pieces. So it's really just a policy guiding document. It's not going to have detailed implementation at all. None of the elements do. It's just setting the programmatic policy framework.
Okay. Okay. And then I have like a question about like the view shed part of the element, because the city intentionally, I was told when we had a problem with our neighbor, that the city intentionally did not have any view restrictions for the residents. And so, because we live close to Orpheus Park, and Orpheus Park is one of the areas that has a view, there's some sort of view.
Yes, there are like there's a old map that's grainy in I forget which element it is, but there are certain view corridors and key vista points and those types of things. Our work is not touching that piece of it. Again, we're just focused on complying with the law. But there is a map in the general plan that talks about viewpoints, key vista points, and I think there's one other category.
And then, so I guess what you brought as new is talking about access, increased access?
It's the criteria that we showed with the two bills. It's really there you go.
There you go.
Yep. So this is a nice summary. So we had to revise the element to show that we could comply with the criteria of the bills. And again, in the context of our built environment. So we're not looking at the view sheds or other components. We're not doing a comprehensive. It's specifically looking at how we can update the document to comply with these two new legislation.
Could you give an example of what would be addressing the equitable access to open space? Because I don't really understand how you would improve that.
Right. I'm going to let Eric chime in here, but for example, making sure making sure some of our trails are equitable, they have like maybe ADA compliant, right? To make sure parks are ADA compliant, make sure perhaps there's equipment at parks that are ADA compliant. There's beach access that is ADA compliant, right? Or mobility challenge. So there's a whole wide range of what it can be. But Eric, you can further elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, well, equitable access just happens to be one area where we added a whole new goal to the element. It's a goal number RM16, and I'll read it. It says, the city will expand and improve equitable access to high-quality, open space, nature, and recreational opportunities for all Encinitas residents, regardless of income, race, age, or ability. So that's the high-level goal. And of course, how did we do that? We added, I think, we're proposing, of course, recently we are proposing to add 5 new policies under that goal that really talk about what that means and how the city would promote that through policy or programs. So one thing that the city, we talked with the city and said, well, we can do an evaluation of how you might open up certain conserved lands or areas that are adjacent to conserved lands to expand the footprint of those areas, especially where we know that that's adjacent to areas that might be underserved now, right? So it's this idea of intentionally looking where we can do that. Another way is pursuing or acquiring additional lands, period, just acquiring. And of course, the city already does have an open space conservation program, so that some of that's already happening, but of course, how that gets done in the light of equitable access could look different. So that policy kind of reinforces that idea as well. And looking at who might be underserved, like, if you don't have you have open space, but it's not walkable. A walkable solution might be to create a connection, a crosswalk. Or maybe it's closing a gap. Maybe there's 500 feet of sidewalk that aren't connecting an area to a trailhead, right? So it really is intentional, and it's very site specific. So the general plan isn't necessarily the tool. The city actually has a Parks and Trails master plan. So that master plan, to the conversation earlier, might be the implementation mechanism because it's a very specific planning tool. It's connected to the capital improvement program and the transportation work that happens. So as you can see, it isn't always directly connected to all the plans, but all the plans have to be consistent with the general plan because it's at the top of the planning food chain, if you will. So what's said in the plan, in the policy document, really does matter in terms of the direction the general plan gives. I won't read all of the programs or the policies that are in that goal, but just that kind of gives you a sense that there are very specific policies that really kind of would dictate the steps the city could take to promote equitable access.
I have a related question to that. So just before we change the subject, then could these additions or changes due to these new state laws or our, desire or our requirement to be in compliance with these state laws, will that change any of these master plans in the near term? Or like, I'm thinking of maybe the cycling access, or like, do you foresee any changes happening in the near term?
It could. For example, Resource Management Policy 16.4, it talks about our active transportation plan and our parks, beach and trails and open space master plan. So it could influence some of those plans, right? And I just want to note, in the policies, they're called out as policies and implementation actions, but they're still pretty high level. I mean, some of them, like the one Eric happened to mention, it does talk about adding signage for dog leash requirements. I mean, that's pretty specific, right? But staff would have to go to council and say, here's our strategic approach. Like, we'd have to develop a policy or program to actually strategically figure out how we're going to do that, right? So some have a little more specificity than others, but it's not like we can just take that and start immediately working on it, right? We typically have to develop like a Trails Master Plan or something to really show how do we improve our equitable access, right? So we could, to your point, I think we could look at our Trails Master Plan and say, hey, are there opportunities here where we could increase access and maybe ADA accessibility, and can we prioritize those over some other improvements?
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to also say that I would like to have bike racks at trailheads, because I just got a new e-bike and I want to be able to be safe. The one point I wanted to say is RM 9.11. And it's continue to fund, promote, and pursue additional grant opportunities for the removal of invasive plant species and restoration of native habitat to create defensible space and natural fire breaks, building on successful fuel reduction programs. I think that's great. I do know, and I did mention it on Tuesday, that the San Diego Botanic Garden that's contracted with the city is doing that, but I thought the intention of what their program was to rewild for building native thoroughfares, and so I was wondering if that point could be made two-sided in terms of, yes, it does have the fire break benefit, but also for the native wildlife or the wildlife corridors.
So can you explain? I'm not sure I'm totally following
Yeah, so
you.
the funding and promoting and pursuing grant opportunities to fund groups. And the group that I know of is the San Diego Botanic Garden group that's doing this at several places throughout the city. And my understanding is the intention is not for fire prevention, but it's for wildlife corridors.
Oh, I see. So this, again, they're purposely written to be broad, so they should be encompassing both,
Yeah, so
not
that's
just
what I'm
one.
saying, is that, can you change the language to include both?
How would you recommend, because it currently says restoration of habitat to create defensible space and natural fire breaks. But also it says
So,
to.
I mean, it's definitely for the defense of the space, as opposed to promoting wildlife,
Oh, I think that's meant to be captured, but we can certainly talk about that, and the restoration of native habitat to create. So you're saying instead of just the fire break, also to be an example of what native restoration could be.
and just, that would increase the use of that point,
Okay.
making it more broad in the future.
To really, and I just want to be sure I'm capturing your point, to really showcase what native restoration could look like at like, for example, at the Botanical
Yes.
Garden? Okay, gotcha.
Right. Because that's what the city's been doing for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, and I just want to check to see if there's not other policies that might already capture that, but I will definitely take note
Yeah.
of your comment to see if it's within the goal of this particular goal, to encourage the abundant use of natural and drought-tolerant landscaping and new development and preservation of natural vegetation. I'll take a look and see if it seems like it's a logical addition.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a closer look. And I mean, my recollection as this policy came together was, it was really about the removing invasive plants, right? Because they're so flammable. These non-native grasses are really risky.
Well, that's
But,
what
yeah.
I'm saying. They're flammable and they have they do not allow wildlife corridors. So
Right.
that's,
Yeah. And I think you're right. There are multi-benefit solutions to this
Yeah.
kind of work. So maybe we just need to kind of work in some language there. But
Yes.
there are other policies in this update that get at what you're saying as well. So we're going to just have to take a close look to make
Yeah.
sure we're not creating a redundancy. But appreciate the comment. Very
Thanks.
well taken.
Yeah, it could be like an example of the preservation or restoration of natural vegetation too. So we'll take a close look,
yeah.
Carol, and see.
It just seems like a spot where you could put it in.
Absolutely.
Thank-
Yeah. I was just going to say something about this is excellent because it's already been mentioned about how we sort of work together, our mission and your mission, that in the future, if there's something that if you wanted to run through, Crystal, let's with our work plan coming up, if there was any specific thing that you thought this body could assist with having a subcommittee or on our work plan, I think it would be nice to hear that. I don't want to just shift staff hours around and put something on Crystal's plate, but if there was something you thought this body could help with by having a subcommittee on our work plan, I think you should run it by Crystal to get to us, because we'd probably be more than happy to help with something you thought that we could help you with.
Yeah. And I think just getting any comments you have on the plan would be great. We've, like I said, Eric and the team have done a really robust work in creating the existing conditions, looking at all the programs, all the implementation documents. And of course, we keep Crystal and Todd involved in other departments, Parks and Rec, wastewater, all the departments have been involved. So, and we have a grant deadline that we are trying to meet. So we are looking forward to wrapping up our public outreach. Like I said, it ends on the 27th of this month, and then trying to move forward to getting it to Planning Commission and City Council.
Yeah, I'm just sorry, just looking at the actual element for the first time because it wasn't included in our agenda packet. But just kind of to echo, I think, a little bit of what Carol was saying about the increasing native plants and kind of preserving existing native plants. There has been, it seems like, a little bit of a tension between the weed abatement and fire abatement policy, how it's implemented in the city, and the protection of existing native plants. It's currently resulting, the notices that many landowners get results in the clearing of native plants, living native plants. So if there's anything in there to kind of strengthen the protection of native plants and, favor the existence of those plants over the clearing of vegetation. And native plants are not categorized as weeds, but there's a little bit of confusion in the notices that go out where landowners might think that the native plants are weeds.
So I appreciate your comment, and we have spoken extensively with our fire department.
Okay.
And Carol can attest to the fact that we have some community members that would love no native plants, right? So we are put in a position where we have to ensure that the ordinances and the documents and general plan that we write, right, they're not in conflict with other documents, but also like our city fire department and our state fire code. So I can assure you that there has been extensive coordination, and I will say that the fire code will always prevail over life and safety, and
Sure.
we don't control that, but our
Right.
job is to ensure that the documents that we prepare have been vetted and approved and are not in conflict with the other elements. So I can assure you that there was extensive conversation, and even with the native plant, there were some things that community members were not clear on native plants. But the native plant ordinance is very, very robust and requiring certain amounts, and then encouraging other, even when it's not required, just there's an incentive program, education program, and even encouraging the use when it's not required. So it really, it's a native plant ordinance.
No, that's great. This might not be the venue for this, an element, but it's not so much that there is a conflict between the way the fire abatement policy is being executed and the native plant policy. It's just the notices that go out cause confusion because the pictures that are sent out to the landowners just take a grainy black and white photo of like the entire property. And so landowners just clear the entire thing rather than clearing the dead non-natives. And so in the past, they've cleared like living natives as well. So it just needs to be a little tweak there, but that is sort of definitely more in the weeds than you're going
No
for
pun
in the
intended.
element. But if there's any language there to kind of just strengthen the protection of native plants, that
Sure, thank you.
would be in harmony with the native plant policy. I had just another like random higher level question, but there had been a lot of talk with some city council members and the mayor about enlisting some environmental commissioners to look into the possibility of the city having an environmental ordinance. Some other cities have that. And it seems like this is an environmental ordinance in many ways, but it's also including parks too. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but if it's ever brought up to you by city council members or the mayor, just sort of if there's any overlap between an environmental element and this natural resources element.
I have not heard anything
Okay.
about that, so you may know more about that than I do. Crystal, do you know anything?
I haven't heard either, but I'd
Okay.
be happy to talk with you separately about it and see
Yeah, I
what's
guess-
been suggested.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, thank you so much. And there's a tremendous amount of work that went into this, so appreciate all of that.
And please, if you have any comments, if you would submit them in writing to Evan, that would be really helpful because we will characterize and look at all comments, and if we can incorporate them, we will. And then all comments are presented to City Council. So
Great.
appreciate any input.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, I would like to make one comment, and it's really just, I really appreciate this one sentence you have. It says, it's in the view shed, and it's something about trees are themselves part of the view quality along the public right-of-way and will be retained. And I just think that's a wonderful sentence, and I'm really appreciative that you have that in the element.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think we could move over to item 10, Maria, is that? Okay, do we have any updates on items of interest?
I've got the Surfrider Moonlight Beach cleanup next Saturday on the 21st. It's at 9 a.m. Everybody's welcome. And then street stewards.
That's right, that's also the 21st. So I don't know where you're going to be, but two places at once?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but street stewards will be up
See, I
at,
know, Katie, you came to one, but JP, do you get those emails? Oh, you do? All right, that's right.
and the street steward one is at San Diego Academy at 8:30. Is that correct? Okay. And everybody's welcome to that too.
I just had one follow-up from last meeting on the offshore oil letter that did end up getting sent from the mayor, and there's actually a second public comment period open again, and the letter was resubmitted to that public comment as well.
Good work.
I have
We'll
a
just stick with
question.
that.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to the city and the council members that did that. I think that was really great. And I just want to know, I don't know if you have any more direction on the extended public comment period. Should we make comments again?
Yeah, I think so.
So that wouldn't be a duplicate?
I don't think so. I think if you want to submit which is why we submitted the letter again.
Okay.
They have more specific information for both Southern and Central California
It-
plans. which I think is why I'm not exactly sure.
It actually makes
But
me a
it's
little
not-
nervous about it.
It's not good news for this not moving forward, yeah.
And council also adopted a resolution too, did that? Yeah. Yeah, just sort of confirming the city's opposition to offshore oil drilling, offshore oil exploration. So that was great that they acted in such a short time frame. Any other updates? Okay. Any future commissioner-initiated agenda items?
I have a couple.
Okay.
One is, I saw that, and I talked to Crystal about this a little bit. Vista, last year, Vista had some sort of program where they worked with the nurseries in the town, and they gave out coupons to people who applied for either shade trees, fruit trees, or pollinator plants. And they gave out 450. So I think coupons for these things, and I don't know how many trees that entails, but that's a lot of trees. And so I think that would be a great program. And Crystal did say that that's in the Climate Action Plan, but I think it would be great to start that as soon as possible. I mean, because I know it takes a long time to plant.
So it's a suggested new measure in the draft Climate Action Plan update. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, Carol, and I was happy to share that that's something that the consultants and staff had thought about as well, and thanks to some other cities who have been implementing such a program. And so, yeah, it would be a tree giveaway program that's being proposed to be developed to offer to the public to install plant trees at their private property.
So this is in addition to the street tree program, which I'm going to say it again, which is a wonderful program that you should tell everybody. The city gives you a free street tree and will plant it and water it for 2 years. So, but that's my second issue is regarding the plastic bag ban at the grocery stores. I still see so many people using paper bags. And, I mean, I have so many bags, and I figure other people do as well. I think it would be really great to have some sort of education, well, really to have some signs in the parking lots to remind people to bring in their bags. Because I think that's the excuse a lot of people have, is they have their bags in their car and they just forget to bring them in the grocery store. So I would like to try to start that, try to get some sort of proposal together to get some signs made for the grocery stores in the town. What I've talked to Solana Center, and they worked with another city where they worked with an organization that made signs, and then they also did the managing of how many people, what's the percentage of people that are using their own bags before and after the signs and stuff like that. So this is done before. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Is because we're at number 11 here, so this would be something that you want to put on our agenda, like a future agenda. Do you have any specific action that you want to propose be added to the agenda? Or were you trying to speak
It sounds like
in-
the first thing is already being done by Crystal and what's happening with the tree giveaways, so it may not have to come back. And then the second one, if we wanted to get into our work plan or something?
The second one, I would, are you thinking, Carol, like how would that be translated into some sort of functional thing that the city could do? So it sounds to me like you're suggesting signage at the stores that people typically bring bags in. So are you suggesting some sort of an ordinance to require that of stores, or encourage them in some way, or offer them signs, have the city create the signs and offer that they can post them voluntarily? I mean, and these are all things that you can consider as a commission if you wanted in a future discussion. And maybe it would be a good conversation for the work plan subcommittee as well, if this was something you wanted to explore there.
I mean, I think this would be part of the zero waste, under the zero waste work plan.
The education, the zero waste education, do you think?
Yeah.
That could be-
Go
yeah.
there.
To increase, people using their own bags as opposed to the paper bags.
And I've had a conversation with Solana Center too, and that there is a large group that's funded, that's putting these signs up all over, like Targets and Walmarts. So maybe we work deeper with their executive director, Jessica, to see if we can get them to do more local, because it's a county-wide event of trying to get these signs in front of stores, but maybe we could ask her if we could get more specifically signs put in Encinitas. Would this be an ask?
Carol, you bring up a good point that I think you're right. It does make sense that it falls under your project number 8, the zero waste, and making recommendations on how the city can better educate the public. And maybe it's something that you could have a follow-up meeting or even just an email to Paul to make the suggestion. And maybe it's something that he could potentially, if he's got the funding, he could fold into his program, or even, figure out a way to reach out to the shop owners, or maybe during their inspections, or there could be a variety of ways. But he could make that suggestion that they post signs.
And when we talked to Paul in October, he was going to come and speak with us. Have you followed up with that at all?
I can ask him if he'd like to come and speak, if you'd
Okay.
like.
Yeah, I'd second
Okay.
that. That would be great to get a presentation from him, just an update on like the zero waste education efforts and that toolkit too. I think they were going to actually use like a couple of test case businesses to do that kind of like cost benefit analysis of switching to compostables and reusables from single-use plastics.
Okay, I'll ask if might be ready to talk about the toolkit.
Okay, thank you. Cool ideas, Carol. Yeah, thanks for sharing your ideas. Anyone else? Okay, with that we can adjourn.
I was going to tell you, EcoFest, what's happening is the board's down to 5 members. And so the president right now, Sharice, lives in Montana at 75%. She owns a house there in McKinney. She said this is her last year doing it. So I know they brought me on, and they were talking to me about wanting me to be the president.